All right, welcome back, family. You are listening to Commitments Radio with our special guest, Dr. Dominique Badea. We're talking about hired or tired, and that's navigating the challenges of the job hunt in 2025. So, Dr. D, before we went to break, you made a statement that I loved. You said, "I'm not my title," behind a question that I asked about your PhD and how that helps you or hurts you in the job market. So, can you talk a little bit about that kind of that attitude towards going into a job search and thinking that because you're a PhD or because you're an MBA or whatever, that sells you.
Right. So, what I learned on this particular job hunt and journey is that just because you have those three letters PhD behind your name does not mean that you're necessarily qualified for that position. You really have to market yourself. You really have to be strategic. And that's what I had to learn in this process. A lot of people without PhDs are qualified, they have more experience than you do. And I've been in the field for, like you said, almost 15 years now, navigating my way to figure out what works for me. But what I realize is that sometimes that doesn't get me in the door, right? So you have to go beyond that and think outside of the box of just that title of PhD. Oh, I'm a doctor, I'm an expert in this particular area. Yes, it does help.
Mhm.
Yes, it makes a difference, but is it always going to be your lifesaver? Absolutely not. So you just have to be well rounded. It's the same thing when you're applying for colleges, right? You may have all the grades, but once you go to interview, they may see that you're not a people person, you're not
Mhm.
a social person,
Mhm.
you don't have these soft skills that become really important outside of those things that they look for on paper. So you have to always just be prepared to showcase yourself more so outside of your title, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And that's really interesting because I know that, having been in management, there were people that I managed that were PhDs who expected, because they were a PhD, they expected for that to get them something extra, right? For it to get them extra salary or extra accommodations or whatever. And I remember having a conversation with one PhD, and the person was complaining about the fact that they didn't feel respected as a PhD. And I said, that's because you're in sales. Sales is not about your title. Sales is all about your production. And it's unforgiving like that. It doesn't care whether you have an associate or whether you have a PhD. And so when you were navigating and you were saying, you polished off your resume, probably spent a lot of time reworking it, reworking your LinkedIn page, as people tell you to do. What kind of responses were you getting from your job applications?
So like I said, I leaned on in the past, I leaned on my qualifications. This time I leaned on being strategic, right? So
Mhm.
I tailored my resume, I made a list of target companies. I did not apply being desperate. That was one thing I stopped doing early in the process. I felt like that was getting me nowhere.
Okay.
Um,
I'm
so
sorry, I need to interrupt you. What does that mean? Apply being desperate.
just applying to positions because your qualities and the job description fits your background,
Mhm.
even if it's something you do not want to do.
Got it.
I was doing that in the beginning, and then I had to ask myself, like, Dominique, do you want to be miserable?
Mhm. Mhm.
Like I don't want that for myself. You're not going to do well. You won't have good morale in the company. So I had to kind of pivot and rethink that over. But some of the responses were encouraging, but some were deflating. Like I said earlier, I got ghosted after great interviews, what I thought was a great interview, rejected within minutes of applying. I think we talked about this in our private time, Ken. And then, like I said, some of these job postings, they're not real.
Mhm.
They're on LinkedIn, they look like they're qualified, they're not. But I kept praying.
Mhm.
I reminded myself that rejection isn't always denial, and it can be a redirection, right? In the
Yeah.
sense, so I felt like each no was bringing me closer to my yes that God had prepared me for.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's really interesting too because I think a lot of us who are in this boat, we do apply out of desperation. And you said something a little bit earlier about how, when you get to a certain point, you start looking at retail jobs, you start looking at warehouse jobs, you start looking at fast food or whatever it is because you're like, oh my goodness, my bills are here. And you want to be able to contribute to your household. And I love it when you say don't apply out of desperation. That is really key. Um, but how do you, with the bills coming in, you have a child, you have a husband, you have a household. How do you, in the midst of that, fight off this urge to just go and work at McDonald's or work at Walmart or whatever. How do you fight that off? And then how do you do it also financially?
Right. So one thing I learned when I was laid off before, but not with these responsibilities that I have now, is that you have to be prepared.
Hmm.
So not even knowing it was going to happen, I made sure that I had a certain amount of months of bills saved in my savings account
Yep.
before even touching my 401k or whatever that may be. So I feel like that was a first lesson learned. And I understood in this process how important that is. I cannot say that enough to people out there who are experiencing this, or even if you're working and you're having a great income stream, that
Hmm.
you have to save. But I remember a conversation that you and I had about just going out and getting any type of job and having that on a resume and how that can do damage to your career path.
Yeah.
So I had to keep that in mind. And then I can't say this enough. I know it sounds repetitive, but I was praying.
Yeah.
When I say I was praying and my family was praying, I know you and Leslie were praying for me, my husband, we
Hmm.
were down on our knees asking God to just sustain us. And I had to remember, like, this job is not my source.
Right.
God is my source.
Right.
He is going to he gave me this, so he's not going to take it away from me.
Right.
So that's what I did, and I was very cautious about how I was spending. I had a budget, I had a plan. I talked
Hmm.
to my financial advisor, and we just made it work. And I swear, Ken, in these 7 months, a bill did not go without being paid. A
Yeah.
car note, a mortgage. We
Yeah.
had food in our refrigerator. My child had what she needed. So again, I don't know without getting emotional. I'm about to get emotional, but it was just nothing but the Lord. I know that was just Him. It was no one else but Him.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are so many benefits to a relationship with Christ, the ability to sustain you, but that's a different show. Did you work with recruiters or career coaches? And if you did, how was that experience?
Yes, so I did work with several recruiters, but to be honest, I felt like most of my reactions with them or interactions felt like dead ends, just to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Many of the conversations went nowhere. Sometimes I felt like I was just another resume in their pile,
Hmm.
but I kept showing up. I kept staying ready for that phone call, their email. And then this one email from Jane Sanders, it changed everything. I wasn't expecting it. And I actually thought she was a scammer. I'm not going to lie.
Hmm.
But it came at the right moment. It felt like it was aligned. I asked the Lord about it, and He gave me the okay to step through the door. So it was an opportunity to now be in account management, which I am doing now,
Hmm.
which is totally out of my rim. I always said I would never go into sales, but this opportunity did present itself, and I thought it would be a great challenge for me. You want to grow in your career, you want to grow as a person, and these are moments and opportunities where you use that. So it just reminded me that it takes that one yes to make a difference from all of those no's, and it was worth it. So sometimes that breakthrough is just sitting in your inbox waiting for the right time to be seen, and I felt like that's what it did for me.
All right. Well, we're going to go to our final break, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Dr. D, talking about hired or tired, navigating today's job market. It's not easy, but we'll be right back.